I think we need the Forest Service on this subject. And here's what I want from the Forest Service. I want three things: data, data, and data. And I want comparison of fire rates on Forest Service land versus privately managed land. I want output per acre. I want to know the kinds of comparisons. I want expense per acre, because I have a sense, and I'm perfectly willing and hopefully will be proved wrong, that we basically don't manage our lands anywhere near adequately, and it's one of the things that contributes to wildfires. If you don't clear out, if you don't do the pre-commercial thinning that Mr. Irving was mentioning, you're building up a base for wildfires. If you leave a lot of forest products on the floor of the forest, you're going to aggravate the forest fire problem. Plus, we're not getting the value from our forests that the public owns as we should. So I hope that we can either do questions for the record or inquiry from the committee to the Forest Service, but I think we really need, I feel the need of data to compare public land ownership with private land ownership in terms of productivity, fires, and all the rest. Mr. Irving, I'm fascinated by your comments about output-based forestry, which I think makes a lot of sense rather than prescriptive forest regulation. The problem that I see is, how do you know the output-based is working without a lot of time passing? In other words, if you are assuming that you're going to measure the output over a period of years, there could be a lot of damage done, not by your company, but by another operator, that then the damage is done. Do you see what I'm saying? Output-based regulation to me is the way to go, but the measurement has to be in such a way that you can be sure that it is in fact reaching the outputs that are desired by both the public and the private sector.
Well, Senator, there's a couple of things on that, and you raised the right points. In the case of Maine, and I know you're very familiar with this, we do an annual audit with state employees. They're independent experts who come in and look at our operations, and that's fine. That's sort of a visual, and they check the numbers. Then every 5 years, we will do a very prescriptive, okay, hard line measurements. Did we do what we say we're going to do? And then today with technology, LiDAR, for example, we can detect, we get satellite imagery. We get every 2 weeks, we'll have pictures of our forest if we want. And somebody can compare this year versus last year or whatever you want to compare. So today with technology, there's no reason why we should have any mystery about, did we say what we're going to do? Because right today, we can count every tree with LiDAR. It's that precise.
I appreciate that. I think that's an important point, that we have the technology today to measure on an ongoing basis. So output-based regulation as opposed to prescriptive regulation can work. Let me follow up another question involving your company and your management. You're a family-owned company. You don't have to report quarterly profits to Wall Street. Talk to me about the structure of ownership that could affect the type of forestry that you're doing. You're obviously doing a lot of things right. You're making a lot of investments. You're looking at a 40-year time horizon. My concern is that the sort of structure of the capital markets in terms of public ownership, of stock ownership, and having to report to Wall Street, pushes toward shorter-term profits, higher harvests, less long-term investments. Talk to me about the difference between family ownership and quarterly profit reports.
Sure. And you summed it up right. If we were a public company, we'd have probably a very hard time explaining to the shareholders what we're doing, some of these things, taking this long time horizon. But there's a couple of things that might ease that problem a little bit. When it comes to tree planting, for example, we advocate, we think, and I know it's not the purview of this committee, but things being able to expense your tree planting. In Canada, we can expense our tree planting in the year we take it. So it's a form of, it's depreciation, if you will. You take it up front. So we diminish the cost this year. But there's no question about it. It's a long-term business. It's well suited, better suited to private enterprise. And so the transition from one generation to another in terms of inheritance or rollover or whatever you want to call it is very important because continuity, you know, if you're in Brazil, you grow the trees in 6 years. If you have a potato field, you know the crop in 120 days. But in the Northeast, you know, it's 40 years. So you have to have a different mindset. And you know, it's tough for the public companies to, or some of the timber REITs, very high hurdle rates to accomplish what you've described.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, could I follow up on one
Please,
question?
please go right ahead.
On a different subject, Ms. Cover, I'm very interested in CLT. I think it's a natural. It makes so much. It's a natural. That's kind of a redundancy, isn't it? But what are the obstacles? Is it building codes? Is it architects' reluctance? Is it just unfamiliarity with the technology? How do we really stimulate the growth of CLT usage across America? And I know, ironically, in Europe, where they have much less forests than we do, they're ahead of us in the utilization. What's the barrier to the expansion of the use of engineered wood products for major building projects?
That's a great question, Senator. Thank you. Yeah, and you hit the nail right on the head in terms of the main hurdle is education and understanding. It is really helping the architectural and engineering community understand how to design these projects, and also understanding the value of working forests. I think helping folks understand what we are all discussing here today, that strong markets for wood products, particularly underutilized species and materials. You know, there's a lot of research being done even in materials that have insect damage that can go into CLT. So this is an opportunity for some of these materials that we're talking about that are creating hazardous fuels. And the hurdle is really understanding that and helping architects and engineers have the tool to design with it.
Well, it seems to me one thing would be examples of buildings. The Portland Jetport has a beautiful CLT ceiling that is a manifestation of how this can work. And maybe we need to talk about public buildings. We have a chance. I'm sure the federal government builds thousands of buildings across the United States on a 5-year basis. We need to show people how this can work, including architects and building inspectors. Thank you very much. Thanks to all
Thanks,
of our
Senator
witnesses.
King.